Grace. Introduction. Joel Loper recently asked, "Write about the beauty of God's grace, Sonny." Me? Am I even qualified to delve into this topic? Neither a theologian nor a virtuous man am I. Grace is defined as the divine influence which operates in humans to regenerate and sanctify, to inspire virtuous impulses, and to impart strength to endure trial and resist temptation, and as an individual virtue or excellence of divine origin. In Western Christian theology, grace is the help given to us by God because God desires us to have it, not necessarily because of anything we have done to earn it. Then there are the 5 graces, referring to an Eastern concept, the 5 graces of sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. Each needs to be honored in the full experience of life. But a third and simple way to explain grace is that it is an expression of God's mercy. That last one, I could somehow understand because it is simple and straightforward. And at its core, mercy is forgiveness. In occasional moments of solitude and meditation, a voice whispers, each one is given 3 cups to fill and offer to the Lord. This perhaps could earn us salvation and forgiveness, and if in luck, experience God's grace. 1. The cup of gratitude. Anything that comes one's way, be it good or ill, there is always room and reason to be grateful. The fun side of life, the flip side, and even the unexpected curveball. Simply be grateful, for gratitude enriches the soul. Always. As with each breath we take. 2. Then there is the cup of forgiveness and compassion. For the harm we have caused, or done to us, and also to share with and understand the misery and condition of others. 3. And the last is the cup of pain and sorrow. For events and situations that break one's heart, pierces one's soul, and crushes one's self. For to become a sage and earn a transcendent spirit, one has to experience and bear pain and sorrow. As they become unbearable, the only option is to offer it back to the Lord. Therefore, in life's journey, in order to witness the beauty of God's grace and mercy, each cup must be offered solely or entirely to our Creator, to venerate, to consecrate and to prostrate in humility and total surrender. This perhaps is one way of witnessing the beauty and splendor of God's grace. As Father's Day fast approaches, I could feel and relate with God's grace in this trilogy about fatherhood. A trilogy on fatherhood. Part 1. A father's advice to a son, the power of an idea. Back in March 1994, my parents graced us with their presence to witness the arrival, birth, of our youngest son, Bindoy, in Toronto. They stayed with us for a month. Sometime in April, I had a serious father-son talk with my old man. I whined about how difficult it was to get a decent job befitting my skills, education and international experience as a new immigrant in Canada. Then, I was stuck in a low-paying data-entry then call center jobs in Canada's second-largest and fastest-rising mutual fund firm. I lamented what a waste of my skills, talents and education to be held in a menial job when I have more to offer, held more substantive jobs before as an economist at UNDP, the World Bank, New York City's mayor's office. And here I was doing this stuff just to eke out a living. An absolute waste of time, when I believed I was worth more. How was I to get out of that rut, I asked him. He listened while seated on the sofa. Quietly. Intently. Calmly. Reverently. Patiently. Yes, that was my old man. Always wisely listening, not prejudging. Just silently, intently listening to his junior. Then, he finally opened his lips, and said this most precious advice to a son, one who was engulfed in frustration. a troubled breadwinner and the struggling head of a young family. You know your strengths, son. You have master's degrees and Ivy League credentials from the best Philippine schools and Wisconsin, right? You have worked overseas and can blend well with foreign cultures and with foreigners, right? You are good in economics and finance, right? You can speak 3 languages, right? You write well, right? You are a fighter and never give up, right? Alright, here is what you could do. Think of an idea, create one. Study it, research it, package it, finesse it, then present it. Write a memo to the president of the company, and see what happens. Wow! That was such a vague and open-ended tip. Where the heck would I pluck such an idea? From a tree? From thin air? From a trash bin? Think. An idea will come, he said. 3 months later, my young family with a 4-month infant, Bindoy, and his big brother, visited Manila for our annual summer vacation. In that visit, we made side trips with my in-laws to Hong Kong and Shenzhen. At that time, the Far East was booming. Cranes everywhere, indicating lots of tall skyscrapers being built. In Manila, in Hong Kong, in Shenzhen, China, then a booming city of 2 million, from barely 20,000 inhabitants of a sleepy town 20 years prior. Look 360 degrees around, and chances are you'll spot skyscrapers on the rise. These places were simply burgeoning and growing economically and financially by leaps and bounds. Affluence was in the air. Remember the term tiger economies? Upon returning to Manila, I was still jet-lagged and woke up early at 3 or 4 in the morning. Little Bindoy was crying and hungry. My wife was fast asleep, tired from nursing our baby late in the night. I woke up, prepared some milk in a bottle, lifted Bindoy from the crib, sat on a rocking chair, and bottle-fed the little guy. As I rocked him, zing, an idea came. Why not offer our Trimark mutual funds in the Far East, establish the first Canadian mutual fund presence in the booming Far East? I could lead that initiative. I know the region well enough. I knew the boys in Manila. I grew up there. After all, I am an educated Asian. Upon our return to Toronto, I wrote up an email to the recently hired EVP of Trimark Funds, and reported about my findings from the Far East. He was the former president of Loblaws, the creator of the President's Choice brand, and worked for the Westons, the Rothschilds of Canada. He was a grad of Oxford, took his MBA in Stanford, and later, he intimated to me, immigrated with his wife to Canada with barely $500 in his pocket. He perhaps understood what my struggles were. He went through it himself. By his looks, he had a strong resemblance to the young Prince Philip, the royal husband, and Michael Caine, the British actor. I never thought my email would be taken seriously. But I always remember my father's advice. And the family trait that run in our veins: honesty, industry, and integrity. Then, a couple of days after, I received a call from the executive penthouse upstairs. Adet, his and the president's executive assistant, asking me to come upstairs. The EVP read my email and wanted to meet me. So, I obliged. Invited me to be seated and said, "I read your email and like your idea. What on earth are you doing downstairs?" So, I told him I was in client service, in the call center. He then declared, "Starting Monday, I want you to move up here. You will report to one of my senior vice presidents, and I want you to go to the Far East with him and study the markets as long as you need. You will be an analyst and will spearhead Trimark's offshore expansion thrust." He then asked, "How much are you making?" I replied factually. He said, "Starting Monday you are going to be paid double that." Cutting the story short, I visited the Far East, then Dublin and Luxembourg, then the Caymans, then Bermuda several times. At the end of my stint at Trimark Funds, I left as a director. He opened new doors for me, and I later became managing director of a hedge fund, investment management company in Barbados. With one single, solitary idea, the course of a son's life changed. An idea was created, and the world became my oyster. And I still vividly remember my old man opening his lips that quiet April night to deliver the single, most powerful advice a father could give and pass on to his son. Think of an idea, create one, study it, research it, package it, finesse it, then present it. Thanks, Papa, for your precious, simple advice that opened many doors for me. I love you. Happy Father's Day. You are the best. Part 2. A father and son talk, under the stars. Early last March, 2016, my Pinoy friends and I spent a weekend at Bureau Beach, Sierra Leone. It was fun as always. For the first and only time, I met Alpha, a young lad who took care of our group from pitching a large tent to lighting up a bonfire to cooking lobsters for dinner and watching over our safety, a perfect host and superb guest relations officer. By midnight, my 5 friends had retired into the large tent. It was breezy by the beach, no mosquitoes around, so I opted to sleep right under the stars. Millions of them, a very rare occurrence even in today's busy workaday world. Approaching 60, one does not get to do this often anymore, and envious of kids in their 20s. I formed a small mound of sand and made it my pillow. Away with the creature comforts, and experiencing nature at its best, the beach, beautiful surrounding mountains, a river flowing out into the sea, and yeah, it was perfectly cloudless and the heavens sparkling with myriad of stars, just like one super huge garden of flowery stars. What else could one ask for? A perfect chance to commune with one's creator. As the night crept in, Alpha, our 22-year-old babysitter, stayed around by the bonfire, acting as watchman along with the 4 village dogs, including Sixto, the cross-eyed native Sierra Leonean husky, in short an Asong. It was as if his self-anointed and personal responsibility to watch over us, to defend us just in case. By midnight, I began to meditate under the stars whilst facing the vast Atlantic. Alpha was observant and watching close by from his bonfire. Curious perhaps what this strange Asian bloke was doing. Alone in the dark, I relished the experience of admiring the spectacle of the ageless cosmos unfold right before me, with an occasional shooting star passing by and personal wishes made. Reminded me of David, the shepherd boy, alone in the fields tending to his flock in the cold dark nights. The feeling was like the world had forgotten him. Only he and his creator, alone yet together. Then as I laid in repose, Alpha kept circling round, checking for any loose electronic gadgets. Yes, those nasty pricey smartphones, left behind by my Pinoy friends who had retired into the tent earlier. He prompted me to bring them inside the tent for my own security. And I did. Then, I advised him to retire and go, get some sleep. But he lingered on as if wanting to chat. I had the funny feeling he wanted to sleep nearby with the dogs. Yes, the 4 canines encircled my blanket on the sandy beach. So, I allowed him to recline by the other side of the bedsheet, whilst I laid facing up the stars. I asked Alpha how old he was, and what he has been doing and his plans in life. He said he wanted to complete his high school and maybe go to college if resources permit. He didn't have the financial means. He wishes to pursue accountancy or maybe train for a skill to enable him to earn and matriculate at the same time. I asked about his parents, and this was where it got rather touching and soul-penetrating. It is as if suddenly the earlier childlike fun and beach frolicking abruptly ended, and the soul-piercing episode began, with only myself, Alpha and our Creator above present, and the stars above as our witness. Scene 2. David's talking, one still in the fields finding his way through life, and another in his sunset, yearning to show the way to the other. He told me his mother is still alive and that he moved in with her, and that he has siblings from other fathers. He is the eldest, but he never met or knew his own dad, not even to touch or speak to him. Not even once. His father died in 2008, he was told. I felt so sorry for him, but I masked it. I asked how it was like not to have one. And he replied, I feel very empty and lonely. I felt it cut right into his very being, his soul bared wide open, his self-worth, and his own essence and purpose here on earth under question. At that precise moment, I realized I had been so blessed to have been gifted with a wonderful father. So, I sighed very deeply and implored the stars above to provide me some guiding words for this lonely, but determined kid. I also noticed from the faint glimmer of the bonfire's light that quiet Alpha has sad eyes. For a moment, I was quietly pleading for even any words of comfort and solace, and if God gives me a little speck of His grace, perhaps some inspiring words to light up His spirit, this searching soul. I think God heard my frantic plea, and words came streaming out of my lips. Thank heavens, if I could only help this lad even change his sad perspective in life. I thought that would be good enough to earn my redemption and salvation. First, I told Alpha even if he was not blessed to have a father here and now, the one up there has always been around, is waiting for his call. By the way, Alpha is a Christian. He has a father as all of us do. Second, talk to him. Each star up there is an angel waiting to hear and listening to our call. Beyond those stars, the Father awaits. Just call out to him. As a little boy, I always liked to gaze upon the stars, and that is how I view them in a more profound way. Third, when he calls, to open his heart, with his purest feeling, wishes and desire, and offer it to his Father, not a word nor a thought, but the purest of intent and one's own heart's essence and yearning. He listens. He waits, for he already knew even before we were born what is in our heart. Fourth, I recounted to him the story of David, a powerful figure in the Bible, not in biblical terms, but like a father relating a timeless story to a young son, one asking about life and its puzzles. David was an ignored son, but with a heart committed to his Creator, with a gift of music and ambition, a heart of steel, a boyish charm, with his sinful lustful demeanor, albeit with a repentant and contrite heart. Always loyal and abiding by his Father. Fifth, I related to him also how in life one meets angels, mentors and guides. I myself met a few, and I am forever grateful just as there are stars every night to wish up to. Sixth, I invited him to join me in solemn quietude and pray. Together, no words uttered, only a beam of light from our respective hearts, sent to the stars above, pushing them up even farther into the realm of our Father. After, I felt something good and blessed for having had this rare chat in the dark with a young man riddled by unanswered questions, perhaps looking for a meaning in life. I hope I inspired this lad. I know he is another David in the works, and I ended by telling him not to give up on his dreams, and that someday when he becomes a father himself, never to forget our conversation that one starry night. Then, my vigil went on, Whilst the winds got colder, I crouched like a fetus awaiting the dawn's arrival, again to pray and be grateful. That night, I may have found a spiritual son to mentor and to guide. On the eve of Father's Day 2016, I ask myself in reflection what it means to be a father. I reckon there is more to fatherhood than passing on one's name, one's genes, one's values, and even one's legacy or inheritance to his offsprings. The real meaning and purpose of fatherhood is to serve, to sacrifice, and to love one's family in the name and in honor of one's Creator. Most important of all, to teach one's children about real manhood, with loyalty, humility and compassion, to give yet not expect to receive, to love yet not expecting to be loved, as in Francis of Assisi's words. It is not about me, but for them. For we are but stewards and guardians, and our final judgment from above will be made according to a life of service and sacrifice, not of fun-seeking and mundane pleasures, nor on social recognition or earthly accolades accorded us. This reminds me of one silent dude in the scriptures, a quiet worker called Joseph, the carpenter. Not a single solitary word of wisdom ascribed to him, unlike many a prophet, yet he was a commanding presence and a testament to real manhood and fatherhood. He was neither a trump nor a big benefactor like Bill Gates, but he carried poverty and modesty with such unique dignity and honor. Which reminds me of how Jim Carrey described his struggling father, a measly accountant. His greatest achievement and gift to his wife and children is the freedom from concern. I could somehow relate to this when asked by a very bright and talented 24-year-old Daytonian lass whilst traveling the dusty roads and rugged outback of rural Sierra Leone a few months ago, "Kuya Sonny, what is your greatest accomplishment in life?" I paused. I could have showcased and recounted pent-up stories of my previous exploits and achievements. But I did not. I simply replied, to have been able to bring food on the table. I always remind myself that Saint Joseph is my namesake. Finally, a father always and patiently waits. His gratification, or reward, or redemption comes on the day his son, a son like me, realizes with heartfelt gratitude what his father had done for him. Happy and blessed Father's Day to all my fatherly brods out there. And God bless. Part 3. Humility in Fatherhood. In the summer of 2017, my older boy came home from Edinburgh, Scotland, for his annual break from his school. He was 25 then, already a full-grown adult, but still rather boyish in his demeanor. He elected to stay in the basement bachelor's den cum family room. Sort of his man cave. One morning, I came down to use the exercise room. I went in the toilet and discovered the water level at toilet bowl almost up to the brim. It was clogged. Good thing it did not spill over the carpeted floor. But I also noticed the roller missing from the toilet paper holder. So, I asked Kuya. That is how I call him. What happened to the toilet and where was the missing roller in the dispenser? He could not answer, too timid to confess to the mischief he committed. I asked again, and he finally admitted that both the roller bar and the roll of toilet paper flew up in the air and landed right into the bowl when he carelessly pulled from it the previous day. I asked him, and you did not take it out of the bowl, and simply flushed it into the pit? He ashamedly and quietly muttered, yes. At that moment, he looked like an errant 5-year-old child. I shook my head in disbelief, almost ready to scold with sharp words. But I stopped myself and refrained from doing so. After all, it was an honest and silly mistake. No point castigating him for the error made. No need to blow it out of proportion, I thought. And no need to treat him like a little child, for he is a grown man now. So, I instructed him to get the plunger from the garage and we shall unclog it together. At that moment, I thought to myself, Sonny, make this a moment that he would remember for the rest of his life. Make this a learning experience for him and for yourself. Show him what it is like to be a man. A minute passed, and he returned with the plunger and a plastic bag. As he stood behind me, I rolled up my sleeves. At that very moment, I began to relate to him my story. An incident with his Lolo grandfather. I slowly dipped my right hand into the toilet bowl and said, "This reminds me of when I was 13 years old. I used to groom and comb my hair at your Lolo's toilet. I was washing my hand with a new Safeguard soap when the bar slipped from my fingers, flew up in the air and landed right into the bowl." As I spoke, my entire hand and lower arm was snaking inside the hole, probing and feeling out if the roller bar was still stuck within. Then I continued to speak. I felt it so gross and yucky to retrieve the soap bar from the bottom of the pit. So, I just left it there. When your Lolo woke up, he called me to his bathroom and asked if I dropped the soap in the toilet bowl. And, I timidly replied yes. He then said, "You are not leaving this toilet until you pick that soap out of that bowl." I hesitated as it was disgusting. I asked if the maids could do it for me. He sternly replied, "No, you do it with your own hands." I cringed in disbelief at what he wanted me to do. At that moment, I could not feel any trace of the lost roller in the bottom of the bowl. It was not stuck in there. My right hand and fingers could not find it. It perhaps got stuck much deeper inside. Then I continued, "So, I lifted it with my same right hand, washed my hand thoroughly with the same bar of soap, and apologized to your Lolo. But I felt humbled. And I thought I will not inflict the same experience on my son this time." Failing to find the roller bar, I asked Kuya to use the plunger and unclog the toilet bowl carefully. Eventually, the water level subsided and came back to normal. He flushed it again, and everything was fine. That morning, I saved him the embarrassment of what I had to undergo 47 years ago from my old man. I realized at that very moment that a father's job is to clean up the mess. Even my own children's mess. Kuya, I noticed, was carefully observing how I would react to the situation he created. I kept my cool. I tried compassion and humility. And above all, I showed him a father's love. Not the tough love my old man exacted upon me, but the soft, gentle love that Christ expected of me. In the end, we both came out of it richer and wiser. A father's role is to set a good example. I did it my way, hoping that someday, when his own son drops something in the toilet bowl, he would do the right thing as well. In reflection, I look back to Joseph when he had to turn an ugly situation, hearing of a pregnant wife-to-be, into a divinely inspired burst of humility and personal responsibility. If a carpenter could do it, why wouldn't I?